What's the story or place you visited or experience you had that is still super vivid in your mind today? Mine is of a story of the first time I experienced culture shock, but it was actually reverse culture shock, reverse from how they describe it. I was studying abroad in Australia for 6 months, and we had the opportunity to go abroad. I chose Papua New Guinea, PNG. I didn't even know what or where Papua New Guinea was. When I first heard about the trip, I knew it was like fairly close, but I had gotten a scuba dive certification in Fiji, and so they were going on a dive trip, and it was mostly with kids that I didn't know, and I was trying to kind of break outside the norm of my comfort zone and the people I was all hanging out with in Australia. It was by far, hands down, the most riveting, eye-opening trip I've ever been on. The most warm, welcoming, loving culture, people. We did a bunch of different dives throughout the country. We slept on the ground in huts because they didn't have any housing, so we slept in huts on the ground on these little mats. They would cook our food outside, mostly just like rice and beans and basic food. And we would go on these complex, dynamic hikes. So long story short, I was there, I think, for 2 weeks and completely fell in love with the people, the culture, the country, the scenery, and all of your comforts in a third world country are really stripped away. And they say, it can be culture shock. I was one of the happiest girls on that trip, and the culture shock hit when I had to leave. And I boarded the flight, and I just remember sobbing and being so sad to leave this like family that new family that I'd found that was amazing, and extended family. And I remember like flying back down to touchdown in Sydney, Australia, and just being like angry and being like, I don't want to be here, just immediate, like the hustle, the bustle, all the traffic, all the infrastructure, all the noise and busyness. And I was ripped out of this incredibly peaceful, nourishing, deep nature and back into the city of Sydney. And I was really confused because no one warns you about reverse culture shock. And it took me a while to settle back in. It was such a fascinating feeling in my body and experience to have this like anger and confusion and like distaste for civilization, which sounds crazy because we like the comforts of our homes, but also we've heard that there are certain cultures or people around the world that have not necessarily the material things that we have, and we know that they're, in many cases a lot happier. There's been documentaries about it. But anyway, I just was thinking about that today. An experience for me was travel that impacted me so deeply that I have never forgotten about that, and that I still revisit, and I remind myself of that because I really have gotten comfortable in my surroundings and in our home, and not wanting to leave and being sad to kind of step away from that. And then I remind myself of like what was on the other side of the really unexpected experience and how awesome it was, and that there's so much more out there to continue to explore. So for the writing prompt today, I know the story got a little bit long, but for the writing prompt today, I want to invite you to think about a time, an experience, a travel place that you went to that has really had an impact on your life, or did then. How can you draw some inspiration from that experience and go back to that time and then make it relevant to what you're navigating today? Because it's just this reminder that we do have all these experiences that we've already lived, all these lived experiences, and we can go back in time and draw from our own experiences and our own knowledge and our own feelings, because a lot of times the answers or the direction or the comfort, it's right there in us, and we're always reaching for something new, and might be something old, might be something that's already there. So a challenge to go back in time and see what you can drum up in your memory bank, and please share a story if you're willing to. Happy writing.